I got to share with the last group, and I definitely would reiterate. I think my time in the NCC was some of the most fruitful, transformational time in my leadership. I came in as a young AD that knew nothing, and it was in the hallways of the national conventions annually that my professional development grew. There were lunches and dinners and coffees where I can remember Chris and I just sitting down, like, what are you doing for leadership? And talking about the swoopies when you were some of your awards banquets. I have borrowed and stolen and all of the things as I have been in conversations. But most of all, it was the professional development. And Dan says that every year, doesn't he? You'll get to the end of convention and it's the conversations and it's the people that make this convention so special. And I can attest to that. And there were times, and maybe you feel this way as well, there were times I felt more known here at convention than I did on my own campus. Because I could talk to different ADs and go, wow, like I can remember getting $100,000 for our athletic department. And I had to fight budget, just budget meeting after budget meeting to get $100,000, and you're clawing for that money, and then you want to be a fair, equitable AD, and so you give it to all your different teams. And by the time they get it, they got like $4,000, and they're like, thanks. And you're like, I just fought for a year. Like, do you understand what it took me to get that $100,000? You know what I mean? The politics and all the concessions, and it's like, you guys get that. You guys get the challenges. And so I in this room, I could feel more known at times. The challenges of leading staff, dealing with administration, but also dealing with coaches and some of the things. So I love the NCC. I love the relationships that I have here. I do want to talk about the hiring process. I think the hiring process is one of the most important things that we get to do as administrators and coaches. And if you're a coach, I would just say the hiring process is recruiting. Do you know that Chick-fil-A will go through over 2 years to hire an operator before they will actually offer the job? And crazily, at the very end, you'll go to Atlanta and you'll go and you'll meet with the CEO of Chick-fil-A, and they will attempt to talk you out of taking the job. And here's their philosophy. If I can talk you out of something that you spent 2 years on in 2 hours, I don't want you on my team. And we know that Chick-fil-A has unbelievable retention. They have unbelievable people that get, but they're going to go through. So we would use language in recruiting student athletes and recruiting coaches. We need to do the Chick-fil-A model. That means we need to do it slow, intentional, and we need to know who we're inviting onto our team. So I was sharing with the last group about hiring. I think telling your story of why you do what you do might be one of the most important things you do in the hiring process. Because that's going to attract. I had a boss that said this: the best time to fire somebody is when you hire them. Basically, you raise expectations so high that somebody says, I don't want to work at your institution. Thanks, but no thanks. And that's going to save you a headache. Wouldn't you rather them like exit before you've even started than have to deal with them 3-4 months? And have you ever hired somebody? I did. I hired somebody. I'm telling you, the first month, I went to my boss. I said, we made a mistake. This is not the person that interviewed. Oh, just see how it goes. Let's just see how it goes. Oh, what a terrible year that was, right? And thankfully that coach moved on, on their own volition. But I mean, it's hard. So tell the story. Here was my story, and I would tell it as much as I could. I grew up in Orlando, played high school baseball, wanted to play college baseball, and I wanted to surf every day. Those are my checks. So I went to Palm Beach Atlantic to play college baseball, and when I got down there at the Christian school, I was surprised. I was surprised when the Christian institution's brochure didn't match what the Christian school actually was. So when I got there, and it changed later, but when I was there, I was one of 2 Christians on the baseball team. My coach couldn't even lead in a prayer. That shaped me. Shaped me as a future AD. It shaped me in that process. I didn't leave PBA for that reason. I was used to being the FCA, leading the spirituality at my public high school. I just didn't think I was going to have to be that same person at the Christian college. But that was influential in my life because when I became an AD, I said I never want a Christian student athlete to feel like a minority on our Christian college campus. And the only way we can do that is to hire coaches that get the mission. That is so critical. And I am thankful. If you guys know him, Bob White, he would come years later and he would transform that athletic department. It was not the same institution that when I was there. So it goes to show you everything rises and falls on leadership. Right? Bob White says, no, we're going to hire Christian coaches that know our mission, that are going to lead spirituality, and that's exactly who PBA was. Right? Everything. So our schools are just, they ebb and flow on how we put people in positions. And so here's what I would say. The church world and sometimes the Christian world, we're really good at looking at our Rolodex just to hire people. And I would encourage you just to engage the national search. Go through the process. It takes time. None of us have time. But if you engage the process, I think you'll get great people. I know anytime we posted a job on the NCAA, right, there would be 100, 200 applicants you're going to get. And you can weed through a lot of those pretty quick because in our cover letter, we expected them to say, how will you integrate your faith at a Christ-centered school? We asked them to respond to that question in the cover letter. If they didn't, it got moved out. How can I get a Christ-centered coach if they're not going to, from the initial interaction with me, talk about wanting to be at a Christ-centered institution? That would be the other thing I would say, too, in our culture. The word Christian's undefined. And so what being at a Christian institution means at your school versus the school over there, you have to define it for your campus. And we'll talk a little bit about this generation with millennials on how they're spiritual, but they're not religious. So maybe you've been in those meetings with a prospective recruit and or a coach where you think you're talking in the same language, only to learn later, like, you're not even close. Right? And so you got to define, what does it mean to be at a Christ-centered institution for your program? Because they're like, oh, I went to the Christian high school and I could do anything I wanted and nobody really cared. But you actually care here, right? So there's a different set of language that we have to be careful of. So we're going to talk about millennials, hiring them, managing them. Millennials, the term millennial generally refers to those between 1982 and 2000. They're currently between the ages of 19 and 37. This is the largest cohort of people alive now. Millennials are entering the workforce in the next 10 years. The entire millennial cohort will be in the workforce. What happened with the baby boomers, how everything, how economically we kind of shifted towards marketing to millennials, marketing to the boomers is now happening to millennials. Because they see the buying power of this generation. And so everything, I was on Netflix recently, just, how Netflix will always recommend these shows. And I was looking at through the lens of this teaching. I was like, you could see all of these millennial shows, even everything is catered now towards millennials. So you'll see a lot of things right now where there's no parents. Like the millennials, there's that show called The 100, right? Where they're coming back to society, young people, they're creating a new society here. There's all of these shows that really are like, there's this age group doesn't even exist in this new utopia. It's just the millennials that are making it happen. My first year at Pfeiffer, I'm in the classroom full time. I have a student, his name is Stephen Miller. He's a tennis player on our tennis team. And I pull him aside for some career coaching. What are you going to do next? Stephen informs me that he's going to be a tennis professional. And I was like, wow, like we must have a stud here at Pfeiffer. I said, so you were the National Player of the Year for D2? Well, not exactly. I said, were you first team or second team All-American? No. I said, were you Conference Player of the Year or first team, second team? He said, no. I was like, were you our number one? He was like, no. I was like, Steven, what were you? Like, you? He goes, I was our 6, 7. I played doubles sometimes. And I said, let me get this right. You're the 7th best player at Pfeiffer, and you're going to be playing professional tennis for a career. He said, that's right. I said, I think you need a backup plan, my friend. And so many of the disillusionment is unbelievable. It really is. And I'm thinking, I promise you the next fall, I follow him on Facebook. Here's Stephen makes a post. He has a GoFundMe account to pay for his career. He's down in Miami at these expensive tennis academies, and he was trying to go professional in tennis. It's unbelievable. I always tell my students, like, I had one year, I had all my first year students come up. I said, what do you want to do with your life? And all of them wrote on the board professional be professional athletes. I have a theory. I would love to test it and do some research on it. I think sometimes, and maybe you guys could agree or disagree, I think sometimes the lower the athletic association, the more disillusioned the student athlete can be. I don't know why. Pfeiffer announces they're going from D2 to D3. They are de-emphasizing athletics, and I've got more student athletes at Division III that think they're going pro than when we were Division II. It was mind-boggling to me. And I'm like, I can't imagine a Division I where the backup actually has a chance to go in the NFL. Like, when I was at Catawba, I had he's a linebacker, he's a 4-time All-American. He's only 3 in the history of the NCAA Division II to be a 4-time All-American. And he's also a sport management student. I pull him in the office. I said, Kyle, what's next? I just want to go back and I want to influence people like my life has been influenced back at the school that I came from in Georgia. Kyle, you're the best player in the history of Catawba. I thought you were going to tell me you wanted to go pro. Hey, if that door opens, that they've invited me to Charlotte, they want me to go to some NFL combines, I'll probably go, but if it works, cool. If it doesn't, that's not why I'm here. Thank you. I don't get credit for that because he was there a long time before I got there, right? So he got it. But that's what we see with this generation. There's a lot of disillusionment, and so they need leaders who have built the relationship into their life that can speak into their life. If you speak into their life without the relationship, then you're just a jerk. And so if you can build that rapport, so here are some insights on millennials. Millennials want a connected family. All the research is saying this, that millennials might be the generation that restores family. Value it. More millennials are calling mom and dad than mom and dad are calling them. They want that relationship. They have the technology to keep it. And so the divorce rate is incredibly low. I hope it stays this way. It's incredibly low with this generation. So they may wait longer to get married, but when they do, it's a commitment that matters. They've seen the pain of divorce. They've seen these other things, and they say, if we're going to enter it, we're going to do it the right way. I think that's incredible. Which ties to number 2, millennials want parental involvement. You have to understand, maybe it's from a bad perspective that we've talked about, the helicopter parents that are always hovering, but mom and dad have always been connected to their son or daughter, and so they see them as an asset, and they see them as a resource that they always want to use. That's pretty incredible too. 60% look to their parents for advice. 90% have been strongly influenced by their parents. I was dropping my daughters off at elementary school just this week, and I have a 1st grader and a 4th grader, and when they got out of the car, I looked up and I saw a girl with a cell phone. I hadn't had this conversation with my kids. I said to my 4th grader, how many kids in your class have cell phones? And she mentioned about 8 in her class. Like, that surprised me. Then I turned to my 1st grader and I said, you don't have anybody in your grade with cell phones. Oh yeah, there's 4 or 5 of kids in my class. 1st graders with cell phones because they can stay connected with mom and dad. But here's how this changes. I can remember talking to a mentor of mine. He said his son was at a basketball camp at the University of Florida. And his son called him that weekend because all of the kids in his room were looking at pornography. And he was able to call dad in the moment and get advice and mentorship from dad because of the cell phone that a previous generation never would have had. That would have been a conversation once I got back from camp. Here's what this happened. Right? So there's good and bad. Let's not look at the bad. Let's also see some of the good things that we're seeing from technology of how it keeps families connected. Just this weekend, I was able to FaceTime my dad. My dad's a general contractor. He's retired now. We had some stuff going on at our house. I was like, I don't know what to do. Right? Now I'm FaceTiming him and he's showing me. So technology really does bring us closer when it's used the right way. Number 3, millennials are diverse. Here's what the data is saying. They don't understand this whole diversity issue. It's all they've ever known. So there's one story where they were talking oh, I see your friends are in a multicultural, they're multicultural relationship, and their friends what are you talking about? That's Michelle and Mike. What do you mean? Well, she's this, and we don't even they didn't even know. So what the other generations stepped into or tolerated, this generation says, we don't even. Why do y'all make that an issue? They're confused by how confused other generations are related to race issues. Millennials believe they can make an impact in the future, and they want to. This is a generation that created Tom's shoes, that we're going to create a company that gives a pair of shoes to a third world country. They're very, very philanthropic. Have you seen this with your students? Right? They want to be a part of something that matters. Number 5, millennials are not workaholics. I can't think of any two things that if you were to combine that create workaholism more, and that's Christian, that's the ministry, and college athletics. And here we just put them together. I joke around and say a 40-hour work week on a college athletic campus is called Wednesday. Right? I mean, the hours are unbelievable. This generation's saying, like, no, we don't need to go through a divorce to work-life balance. We want that now. I think that some of that's to be commended. Some of it is misguided. Right? We all had to work in our 20s. We all had to work hard to get ahead in those things. But again, they're looking for that work-life balance, and they're not at, like, they're going to question some of those things if it goes past that. Millennials want a mentor. Previous generations talked about having an apprentice or an apprenticeship. This generation just doesn't want to watch you. They want to know why. A conversation at a coffee shop will go a long way. Inviting them into your home will go a long way. Right? So this generation wants to be a part. My question to us, the older generation, do we have the time to mentor? Our schedules are busy. Will we make... I'll never forget one of the leaders at Southeastern said this. A student walked into his office. It said, you've heard this, right? I know I have. Hey, I know you're busy, but do you have a second? Have you heard that from your students or from a coach or something? I know you're busy, but do you have a second? And this person looked at the student and said, what you just said is almost offensive. The only reason I'm here is for you. If I have ever given off the impression that I am too busy for you, I am so sorry. How often have we given off the impression that we're too busy, that the very people we need to be serving don't think that we're approachable enough because whatever that is that we have to do and get done is more important? That was a gut check to me. I know I had a best friend that came to Southeastern one time, and we had backpacked Europe together, and he swung by like the day of, those impromptu, you don't get any preparation for, hey, I'm on campus, you got a second? I was like, oh man, my schedule's crazy. Let me see if I got 5 minutes here. I saw somebody, the provost of the school later, and he's like, oh, I saw Duke. Man, we spent like 2 hours together today. I'm like, you're way more important than me. You have way more. How did you carve out? Because he got it. And I was too busy staying busy. Right? So we got to make sure that we don't give off the impression. They want to be mentored, but if they don't think you have the time to mentor them, then they won't even come by. Millennials are green, but they're not that green. So I think there's this belief that environmentalism is what they're all about. I think it's a value, but not the most important value. Millennials communicate unlike any other generation. They have so many resources, and they're always changing. I learned this from doing this research that there are streaks on Snapchat. Do y'all know this? That they try to keep streaks going with friends. And if parents will ground them and take away their phones or whatever, they will send their passwords to their buddies to keep the streaks going. That makes sense to me. It's important to them. The phone is the most important thing in their life. The data says it's more important than their car. They would rather go a week without their car than a week without their phone. Right? That's why like in class you want them to put their phone away. This is their life. Have you seen the Arizona Cardinals, the NFL coach that now is giving cell phone breaks in the middle of his practices? I don't know what that means. I don't know how. Here's the other thing. All the book and the research that I'm reading is they're asking the older generation to flex to millennials. They're not asking millennials to come up to meet the expectations of the older generation. That's a tension point. I don't know how you solve that. Because the flexibility they're asking on this end, not the education to come up. Millennials are financially confused. So I've talked to millennials. They say, oh, I didn't take that job. I said, why? They only offered me $28,000 in benefits. Like, do you have any other offers? They're like, no. I was like, are you kidding? I was told I need to hold out for 50. Is anybody offering you 50? No. What are you doing? I'm working at Starbucks. But you said no to the job in your field, salary and benefits? Yeah, that's what I was told. I was like, whoever told you that's wrong. Like, go back and beg for that job, right? You need to get your foot in the door. You need to work in the industry. I have a student at Catawba. She's so bright. She is so bright. She's done 3 internships. She was the North Carolina Sport Management Student of the Year. She is killing it in so many places. And I told her that the Kannapolis Intimidators in our hometown, they're about to build a $50 million stadium. They'll move into it this next April. So they're about to grow from a staff of like 5 to 20. And I'm like, Haley, you need to get in while you can. So they had all these opportunities. They had some volunteer nights that I had set up for some of our students, and Haley didn't go. And she's a senior. I'm like, Haley, you need to be there. Like, the GM's going to be there. This is a chance for you to build this network. I was like, you need to be there. And one of our sophomores, and she's kind of doing this, but she's made some bad choices, but she's got a great personality. She went to those things. They offered her internship right on the site. And Haley has a way better resume, but she missed that moment. They don't always connect these things, so we got to coach them through. And I'm trying to coach Haley. I was like, you just got to keep on. You got to be visible at the time you need the job. Not your sophomore year, way more important your senior year. So they're financially confused. They think the government's going to be there to help them at retirement, like government did for health care. And now they even believe that all the student loan repayment, that the government is ready to write those checks, right? So they are confused. Millennials, I think this speaks to us. Millennials are not religious, but they do talk in spiritual language. And again, I think this is important in the hiring process, because I think you could be talking to somebody that seems like they're speaking your language, and then once they get there, you realize your theology is way apart, and these are some major issues for your campus. So I think you have to define for your campus what it means to be a Christ-centered school. Because on the next campus, it may look different, right? And so Millennials at Work, just some data. The turnover is costing the U.S. economy $30 billion annually. We're seeing a lot of disengagement from millennials in the work. They're literally looking for other jobs on the clock while they're working for you. Does this bother you as much as it does for me? This generation, if you give them a task, they'll do it. And then they're done. And then they're getting on their phone. And it's your fault because you didn't give them something else to do. They have not connected the dots that once you are done with one task, go find another task to do. We had a student doing grad stuff at the University of Arkansas. And he calls me up, he says, Dr. Aagaard, I'm done every day with my GA by 12. What do you think I should do? I was like, what else do you have interest in? He's like, I love marketing. So he started knocking on doors. He said, I'm here for this GA. Could you, do you have any needs? And I said, yeah, game day. We have hospitality needs in our suites for Arkansas football. Would you be interested? Brandon's like, absolutely. Well, sure enough, Brandon's working game day, home football games. This is not part of his graduate assistantship, but he realized he had the time, he wanted to do more. And whose suite does he get but Jerry Jones? Jerry Jones, the biggest alumni of University of Arkansas, and so he's like, man, I gotta be sharp, He's like, I'm not gonna do a selfie. I'm not asking. I want to be professional in this moment. So every home game, he's there. About the 5th home game, Jerry Jones notices him, talks to him, asks him why he's in school, and they make this connection. He says, well, we'd love to bring you down to Dallas. Would you be interested in working the Thanksgiving football game? Brandon says, absolutely. So Jerry Jones brings him down to Dallas, and he works the Thanksgiving football game. Then he works the state championship game that the Cowboys host in their practice facility. All of this stuff because Brandon realized when I was done, that doesn't mean to get on my phone. When I'm done, how can I keep growing and becoming a better person? And he opened doors for himself that other students would have missed, right? And I always tell my students this, go high-five the people that don't step up because they just made the line shorter for you to get that job. Go thank them. Oh, you don't care? Oh, you want to do poorly? Awesome. Good. Because that just made the line shorter for me because I'm going to get that job. Millennials want a collaborative workspace. I've shared last group. I work part-time at our church, and they just went through this remodeling of all the offices. We used to all have doors and desks and chairs for people to come into our office. They got rid of all those. They have these huge tables about the size of this whole section, the size of this section. It's got these little partition things come up, not very high. I can still see everybody. And there's probably 18 to 20 people that work in this area. And there's a big TV in the back. It's got worship music galore going, and I hate it. I can't get a darn thing done. But that's how they work. I'm the old person in the room. They're all 22, 23. They're all getting, they want these collaborative workspaces. I don't want it. I think they literally have talked about putting a rock wall up in this office area. There's a putting grass. They want Facebook. They want what they see they want that kind of atmosphere. And our pastor gets it, and it doesn't connect to me, but I'm not the one he's trying to, right? These are the people there all day, every week. I'm just part-time. I come in a little bit, but it is but they want these collaborative workspace. They want to stand up and exercise while they're working, right? All of these things that we're seeing with millennials. Okay, so here are some strategies to connecting with millennials. Number one is be flexible. When you can let millennials have it their way, if it makes sense, do it. Don't fight the old, well, this is how we've always done it. Where there are good ideas, let's value them. Be careful for the bias of, I would never have asked that. I never would have done that. I never would, my first week there or my first month there, I never would have asked to go on a mission trip. So be careful with those. We have to, but don't lower your expectations either. If you have real expectations, set them, clarify them, be consistent. Work-life balance, again, is very important. Here's some things that you might consider. I had a boss, he always said this, I can't give you money, but I can give you time. How can we give our staff time? How can we recognize those busy seasons? The month of August for us was insane. Fall athletes getting back early, leadership retreat, the big the 7 big events orientation. I would remember going for the month of August, 28 to 30 straight days with no days off, right? That's probably normal for a lot of us. And the month of August was insane, right? Well, let's give people that time off on the back end. Let's look for those moments. Fight against illogical HR policies within your institution and seek flexible leadership where possible. I was sharing with the last group, our institution, I don't know why, but your first year, you only got 1 week's vacation no matter how long you would work somewhere else. It doesn't make sense. Why? So if you have the freedom, don't go against any of if you have the freedom to provide stuff for your people, do it. Do it. We had a cheerleading coach who worked full-time in financial aid, but she got a little stipend for us to be our cheerleading coach, and the financial aid department made her take a week of vacation to go on a mission trip with her team. Are you kidding me? This is the exact thing that we want out of our people. She's practicing at 10 p.m. She's given so much of her time, and now you're going to make her take a week of vacation? Well, it's not fair to the other financial aid people. Well, the other financial people aren't leading the cheerleading team. She is. Right? So where it's illogical, let's be advocates that some of these HR policies, there is inconsistency because certain people are doing things different. Right? Those people are going home every day at 5. Not coach. She's here doing it for peanuts. Put their imagination to work. I really think this should be across all people, but here's what it's about millennials. Other generations just complain to their spouse or talk behind the boss's back. This generation is check please, I'm out. So invite them into the process, because if they don't feel a part of the team, if they don't feel like their value, they can't add value to it, then they usually will leave pretty soon. Some strategies here: invite millennials into the process that sets the vision for the department. Remember, they have not been around long enough to learn the unspoken rules of meetings. They think that the first meeting they show up to, they can actually add value with the president of the college. You didn't say anything for 3 years when you were in those meetings. They think the first meeting they actually can jump in and be equals with the president. It's crazy, but that's how they are. So you might as well invite them in and teach them the etiquette of your culture, but invite them into the process. I put here, why can't junior members of the team be a part of the search committee for the next head coach? Invite their input, right? Some of these were your best student athletes. I also asked this question: why can't a young alumni be on the board? Isn't this what we're about? Why do you have to go get titles and careers to have a voice? Let's give people a voice if we can. Change things up, move your staff meetings to new locations, give ownership the various parts of your meeting to others. Maybe there's a part, a devotion. Maybe there's a leadership teaching. Maybe there's something you can give to one of your millennials so they're adding value to your staff meetings. And remember to have fun at work. Remember to have fun. Play softball. Play wiffle ball. Do something with your staff meetings. One thing that I was surprised whenever we interview people, I was always trying to get insights like, what do you do at your school? And how often one of the things that I was astonished to learn when I interviewed coaches from other institutions, I would always ask, how often did your AD have staff meetings? And this is how we did it. We did it once a week. I would hear once a quarter, once a month. And for me, my coaches, that was my team. A coach sees their student athletes every day. Can you imagine coaching your student athletes once a quarter, once a month? Like, I want to be, not that I always have the greatest insights to give you, but I want to be a team. And if we don't see each other, if we do silos all over the campus, then we're not coming back together. And so have fun at work. And how do you do that? Take them to, when movies would come out, sometimes we'd go rent out a movie theater, take our department there. So find ways to do that. Build relationships with them. This matters. Millennials are used to getting a lot of positive attention. They like it. When they enter work life, they anticipate the same consideration. I put here, sadly, the bar is very low. At our church, I'll hear these students who are grad students, and they're telling me, yeah, I got a 98 on my paper. I can't believe that, professor. I'm like, you got a 98. Celebrate that. They're actually like, yeah, I'm going to reach out to the professor and ask why I didn't get the 2 other points. I'm like, what's wrong with you? You get 90. I don't give 100s, right? Like, you be happy with the 98. So the bar has been set really low, but they want these relationships. So get out of your office, grab lunch with your team, hold meetings in their office, invite them over to your home. I can't tell you how important the home is. My wife was a chaplain for the women's soccer team when I was the AD, and she would invite the girls over 3 at a time. She created a special menu. They got to pick what they wanted to eat. And she would ask 2 questions. Why did you come to Southeastern? And what do you want to do when you leave here? And I guess there's a third. And what's God doing in your life? She asked those 3 questions. That was it. We would talk for 2 hours. And I tell you, the dynamic for me as the athletic director changed from me being the initiator to like, hey, how's everything going? To them, hey, Duane, how's it? Like, they were looking at our wedding pictures. When you invite a student athlete into your home, when you invite coaches into your home, it's a game changer relationally. All right, I hear you, Chris. Ambiguity is the kryptonite of millennials. This generation is recognized for their intellectual ability. They have a hard time staying focused when they're like, you have to give them tasks. So I used to tell students that worked for me, once you get done with this project, here are 3 books. I don't ever want to see you on the internet. Read these leadership books. Read this. Do this. I'd have another board over here. When you get done with these, if I'm in meetings for the rest of the day, do any of these 5 things. So find ways to over-communicate. I made the assumption. I had a student in my office one time. I was doing advising, and they were on their phone and doing this, and I thought they were just like surfing Facebook while I was doing their advising work for them, and I was getting so mad. And I was about to rip into them, and they put their phone down, and they were actually on the same portal I was on doing their advising. I was interpreting them on their phone as being offensive, and they were actually using it as a laptop. And so I'm so glad I didn't. Do not assume they know what to do. What you consider common sense, they are clueless. Students walk into my classroom with headphones on, earbuds. It drives me nuts. I've had to put it in my syllabus. I don't care what you do on this campus when you walk in this. I think most of us would think that's rude. Nobody walked in here with earbuds today. But instead of getting offended, which I did for a couple years, I realized that they actually don't know. So I started talking to them. I was like, hey, do you know that it's rude to have earbuds in your ear when you're in a room? And they're like, no one. And I was like, yeah, it is. They're like, well, I'm not even listening. I go, that's ruder. Just take them down, right? So we have to begin to teach them what is common sense that they simply don't know. Millennials need career coaches. That we read a stat earlier. They change jobs 1 to 3 years, but they need us to be a part of their life as career coaches. And maybe that means we launch them. Maybe they don't stay with us forever. And that's okay, right? Last point here. I believe in this room we have an advantage of working with millennials because you've already been doing it. You've already set the culture, you've already set the relationship, and I believe the millennials that we are coaching understand some of these things even better, right? And so those working in college athletics, you've been dealing with some of these challenges for a while, where the workforce is just now learning about these challenges. I don't know that we have all the answers to these challenges, but we've at least seen some of the challenges out there.